Just over 2 years ago, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, was quoted as saying that he wanted to compete Wonga out of existence. There have since been major upheavals, regulation, and some positive initiatives in the credit industry, and I am very honored to be joined today by His Grace to discuss his important work in this area. Your Grace, nice to see you. Thank you very much for taking time and making the time in your busy schedule to talk with us.
I'm delighted to be here.
I'd like to ask you about the comments you made a couple of years ago in 2013, where you said that you would like to not so much legislate Wonga out of existence, but try to compete them out of existence. And you explained that the credit unions would be a big part of that, and it would take 10 years. And they quoted you rather more aggressively than that. Your comments, I thought, were quite benign and friendly, and you said that the Wonga gentleman was a businessman and took it very well. But they made it more aggressive than it was, and they made it almost an attack on payday lending, which I don't think was your intention. It was a very friendly comment. How did you view that reporting at the time?
I think I agree with you. It was, the newspapers have to jazz it up a bit, and I agree with the comments you make. However, I think it's really important to say that I did and do feel very strongly about the way that many of the payday lenders were operating. I think in a previous interview when I was Bishop of Durham up in the northeast with a local paper, which never got picked up, I commented that it was then 2,500% a year has been considered to be usury since the days of Moses. This is an unacceptable form of business practice. And I suppose that my underlying thought was two. One, you can't legislate bad practice out of existence in the financial markets. It just shifts, it shape shifts very quickly. And secondly, if you legislate, people find their way around the legislation, but people can't get round effective competition. Now, competition isn't always head-on. It may be finding new markets that replace a malignant form of market with a benign form of market. And I think that's what I was feeling for.
And they also didn't, that's absolutely right, and they also didn't give credence to your 10-year horizon for that process that you described. But as you say, they like to be sensational.
They like to be sensational, as you know, as much better than I do, that what's trying to be done here is the creation of a new market sector, and you're not going to do that overnight.
No, that's for sure. At the same time, nevertheless, though, I do think that all of that was a bit of a catalyst, which combined with your background as a financial man and your time on the Treasury Select Committee and the Parliamentary Commission on Banking, actually brought some legislation which has done a great deal of good. I don't think it would have happened without you.
Well, I think that's probably true, though, funnily enough, as we sit here, I've just come from a church service where I was commissioning local credit advisors. And there was lots of stuff about, this comment and the impact it had. And I was very conscious and really from the bottom of my heart wanted to say, I don't take the credit for that. That somehow it was just a comment, an accidental comment that seemed to press the right button at the right moment. And from my point of view, in the grace of God, people picked it up in local communities and ran with it. And it's actually had quite a big effect. I would love to say that I'd worked that out, but it was purely accidental, from my point of view.
That's very modest. We've spent this afternoon actually interviewing some of the church credit champions, and we've seen the incredible work they're doing. It's
very inspiring.
It's an amazing initiative. What else is to come? What do you envisage as further initiatives? And may I ask, have you ever been in such a situation facing a desperate need for a loan, or anyone you know? Do you have a personal experience of it?
Oh, absolutely. As a teenager, I remember my father buying some very cheap suitcases from Marks and Sparks and packing them up late one night, and we slipped out of the flat we were living in because he couldn't afford to pay the rent. So Moonlight Flit. So I remember that was a shaping memory of my time growing up. And secondly, quite soon after we married, we just, typical young marrieds, we just hadn't budgeted properly. And we couldn't see how to pay the bills. And so I'm very aware of the huge pressure it puts on you. I mean, you'd know that. We all know that. Most young couples have done that at some point. In terms of future initiatives, I remain sufficiently a market person to feel that we have to see what emerges. The market is often a good way, is often clever at finding initiatives that meet a particular need. But I think particular things are about we need sustainable community finance in terms of very small micro-level quasi-equity products that enable people to start small businesses, micro-business, with less risk. The first textbook I read on debt began, the opening sentence was, "Debt is risk." And when you borrow money, you increase the risk in the business. If you're starting a very small business, we all know they have a very high failure rate. You actually need to find ways of lessening that risk, and that means some kind of quasi-equity product. And there are areas like this that will help some of our most deprived areas find new economic life.
Do we need more regulation? Do we need more? Or have we had sufficient? Is there a place for payday lenders now that they've been capped and the rest?
Frankly, I doubt it, not at the interest rates they were charging. There's a place for short-term, easily accessible loans, but on more reasonable terms. I think there is a place for regulation, but regulation doesn't solve anything. I said recently in something I was doing, the trouble with regulation, it slams the stable door after the horse has gone. The only horses you find are the ones who are so dopey they never realise the stable door. It finds a way around it.
Yes.
It's just not a good way of dealing with things. The main drivers of change are culture, convention, condemnation by society. This is a really bad way to behave, has more effect. And I mean, the regulatory area, that some of the big banks employ 200,000 people and might have 150 regulators. They're never going to know what's going on.
How do you take all these valuable initiatives out beyond the church community? There are plenty of people in this country that don't go near a church. How do you reach them?
That's actually one of our less difficult things, because in this country, the Church of England has, if I can put it in crude commercial terms, the best branch network on the face of the planet. We have 15,000 branches in England, parishes they're called.
Yes.
They're worshipping communities, and they are in every single community. Now, it doesn't mean you reach everyone, but through the year we reach a significant proportion. I think the most recent research shows that about 30% of the population will have contact with the church at some time during the year. And when you do something good, in most parishes, word of mouth spreads incredibly quickly. Have you heard, I'm not one of these religious folk, but I went down the local church, St. Peter's, around the corner, and they showed me how to sort out, my finances, and I was having trouble with my partner. Well, now that the finances are better, we're much happier. And people think, oh, that's pretty good. I might try that.
May I ask you about technology? Everything is happening faster. It's all the age of big data and big data, digital. Everything is digital. Much more separation between businesses and their customers now.
Yes.
The trick is how to put fairness into the process. In our campaign for fair finances, fairmoney.com comparison, our new comparison website, we're trying to instill fairness in all the processes. for example, as you know, we're including all the credit unions and non-for-profit lenders
Indeed.
on the website for free at no charge. Initiatives like that on a bigger scale. What can you do about all the wires, all the tech in between people and businesses, especially financial businesses these days, where, you know, it's not like you sitting down with your bank manager years ago, it's all automatic in a second. How do you keep fairness in there? How do you keep the principles of the church in there?
I think if I could crack that straight away, then, you know, I'd be running quite a large chunk of this country, I suspect. I think there isn't a single magic wand. I think one of it is pressure from people like yourselves. I think the work you're doing is really special because it puts pressure on the institutions. Fairness comes from both sides, doesn't it? I mean, in your business experience and mine, one or both parties in a deal have to decide they're going to play fairly. So part of it is changing culture. Part of it is things like comparison websites that are not skewed towards anyone but are genuinely fair. I think part of it is also about local community. The biggest loss we've had over the last half century or so has been the loss of local communities. There have been many gains. You know, life is now infinitely easier and better in many, many ways than half a century ago. But one of the losses is the sense of local community. And fairness also comes through the asymmetries of power between borrower and lender, retail borrower and wholesale lender. It's a very unequal relationship.
Totally.
But you have, if the retail borrower has someone who helps them think things through, if they're not used to doing it, or has a basis of information that enables them to reflect more carefully before they make a decision, it's amazing how you change the balance of power, and you can much more easily enforce fairness.
That's from the point of view of advising the consumer, which you and the Church Credit Champions Network seem to be rolling out.
And also your kind of
effectively.
website.
And our kind of website, fairmoney.com. Thank you. But what does one do from the lender's standpoint where, you know, we have complained to the regulators, we've complained to the newspapers, we've been in the press, saying that there are certain websites, comparison sites that list people by what they pay for the, and you know, anybody, it's human nature to click on the first listing,
Yeah,
and especially with desperate people, they're going to grab the first thing they see.
Absolutely.
Even though the rate or the terms are not as good as something 4 places down below. How do we instill in lenders a sense of fairness in this age where they can get away with anything literally at the push of a button?
Well, carrot and stick. The carrot.
How so?
The carrot has to be, I mean, it's one of the things we were trying to push on the Banking Standards Commission, was that better culture and behaviour should lead to less onerous regulation and capital requirement. Because if you're behaving better, you should be considered lower risk.
And did that work?
There was a certain amount of pushback from certain areas, shall we say. But I think we need to keep pushing on that. The stick is the reverse. That people, that websites who misbehave in that way should be named and shamed. That can be done through Parliament, it can be done in many different ways. But also that lenders who participate in these things, because it is increasing the risk profile of the business, it makes their business more volatile, should find themselves with higher capital requirements and regulators breathing more heavily down their neck. This is much more selective, intelligent regulation, not just blanket regulation.
But the Parliamentary Banking Commission is gone now.
Oh yes, but you've still got Parliament. You can still ask questions in Parliament, and if people involved in looking at this, who know about this, who understand what's going on, help those in Parliament ask the questions. I mean, you know, frankly, the attack on payday lending, Stella Creasy in the House of Commons, she was working at it for years.
Yes.
Absolute, just remorseless, question after
At least
question.
7 years.
Question after question, statements, special debates, and it just, you know, water dripping on a stone. It wore them down in the end.
Your task force winds up in December, I believe.
Yep.
What are you going to do to continue it? to continue your legacy, and are we going to see Archbishop Welby carrying on initiatives like this, which only I think you can do uniquely, again, because of your financial background, in the world of finance, at least consumer finance? Can consumers count on you to carry on?
Answering the questions in reverse order, yes. It's a nice straightforward answer, yes. What's going to come next? We've got to be a bit cleverer and more specific. This was an initial wave of emotion. It's now got to be focused down, and we've got to say, what can we achieve? And that's what we're working on. And we will need someone to take over from Hector Satz, who will be an effective, innovative, entrepreneurial developer that will help the existing credit unions, other community finance organizations develop.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you
very
very
much for taking the time. From what we know from having done the interviews, it's been such a busy day. I really appreciate your
Well, I'm very grateful.
sitting down with us. Thank you.
You.